Well, we're going to get started. We have a nice small group, so this will be great. And others can join as we go. So thank you again for joining us. This will be just a nice quick webinar, giving you a sense of our Intro to JavaScript course. My name is Ryan. I am a curriculum developer here at CodeHS, and I'm currently living in Pennsylvania, although I'm with my family in San Diego right now. So kind of all over. But I've also worked on the account side, and so have worked with teachers and admins throughout the year and talking about courses and course pathways. So have a little experience on both sides of things. So today's agenda is very simple. We're going to talk about the course, give an overview, what it includes, who it's for, some things to keep in mind as you're deciding if you want to use this with your students. I'll also jump on the site and show you how and where to access the course and some of our resources. And then we'll definitely have time for questions and answers. I want to make sure that whatever you guys are wondering, we can address. And again, I have a colleague with me to help type out some answers, and then we'll have time at the end to talk. All right. So this course is a full year high school course. We actually have a few different versions of the course to help you tailor it to your specific schedule and needs of students. And I'll show you those different versions when we get into the course catalog. But in general, it's a graphics-based course, so it's highly visual, a lot of interactivity, and I think it really engages students well. I think it's honestly one of my favorite courses that we have, just because it's so interactive and there's just a lot of room for creativity. It does teach the main programming fundamentals with JavaScript, and there's a lot of content. So we have a lot of room for extra supplemental and for remediation or extending students if you want to challenge them. It's designed for high school, grades 9 through 12, but really I've seen some middle schools use this as well. But it is a full year course, and it is set up as an intro course. So students can start this with no programming experience, and it really will take them from zero and get them set up with the major programming fundamentals. So it's a great starting course if you want to get kids into programming. Like all of our CodeHS courses, it is entirely web-based. So you don't need any plugins or software. You really just need a browser. So laptops, computers, even Chromebooks work great. And most of our lessons will include short videos, presenting material. Usually there's formative quizzes in there, examples that students can kind of try out and explore, and also are great for you to use in your discussions. And then, of course, a lot of programming exercises and projects. As I said, it's designed for a full year course, and we're kind of considering it meeting 5 days a week. But if you can think of a schedule, different schools have done it in different ways. So anything from like block periods, alternating days, to having shorter sessions each day, you can really tailor to what you need. So to give you just a bird's eye view of what's in here, and you'll see when we jump into the course, there's a few more modules that break these down, but essentially the course starts out with our introduction to programming with Carol the dog. I honestly think this is one of the best ways to start kids off on programming. And what it is, the coding environment is a simplified JavaScript library with specific commands that students learn to direct Carol around her world. But that being said, it does get into the full major programming concepts. So students will learn about just organization, will learn about conditionals, control structures with loops, and even functions. So it gets into the major ideas, but in just a slightly simplified manner. So it's not the complexity of the full language. It can be, this module can be done in block-based coding or syntax-based. So it's also a great transition for any students who have maybe done some block-based or are struggling with the syntax. From there, the course moves into JavaScript. So it applies all of the major ideas learned with Carol into now the full JavaScript. And so we introduce variables and user input, and then apply the major control structures and functions in JavaScript as well. We also then introduce graphics, so that can be used on the canvas. And so students will learn about the coordinate system and how to place the graphics, and then be able to draw pictures with their programs. And I think really where it starts to get fun is this animation in games. So students learn how to now animate those graphics, move shapes around the screen, and create some user interactivity. And so this just, I think the creativity that students can use here and moving forward is really quite fun. And so we have our regular course, kind of our primary course culminates in a project called Breakout. It's a classic arcade game, and I'll show you a demo of that. But it's a great final project where students from scratch have to design each element of the game using everything they've learned up to this point. So there are a lot of rooms for extension. One of the major ones is we have a module for basic data structures. So this will include looking into lists, arrays, and sets. And then we also have a couple projects, game-based projects, that students can then leverage the power of those data structures in their games. You know, really being able to do a lot more with less with those data structures. And as I mentioned, we do have a lot of content. So each course has a supplemental section. So everything from extra practice for remediation to challenge problems for those kids who really are excelling and you want to challenge them a bit. And then there's we have a midterm in there as well, and then a couple other additional topics relating to the course. So here are a couple demos that I just want to highlight. On the left, this is our programming with Carol. And so, as I mentioned, Carol can be used in either block-based or syntax-based coding. So this example is using the syntax-based. And while the program is, not lengthy, it's maybe just over 20 lines of code, it does get kind of complex. It's using different functions, and it's using control structures, while loops, to be able to have Carol do what you want to do. So really, by the end of this Carol unit, students are handling some, I think, complex programming ideas, again, in a simplified environment. And on the right here, this is an example of the Breakout game. Again, I love it. There's a lot you can do with it and kind of customize it, and students can, again, are starting from scratch. So adding their own shapes, generating the shapes, the colors, the user interactivity, and animating it all. So it's an awesome example that students can then include on their digital portfolio, or you can share it in a showcase. Cool. All right, so let me show you how to access the materials here. The easiest way is going to be through the course catalog, and I'll load this up, but if you go to codehs.com/course/catalog, that will bring you to that main page. We do have a direct link to the course, so if you wanted to take the course yourself and just start to explore, if you just, you have course/1/start, that'll just stick you right in. But I'll show you how to do that right now from the course catalog. So I'm jumping in here. So I typed in codehs.com/course/catalog, and so this is what it loaded up. So this is our full catalog. We got a lot in here, and if you've attended our other webinars, you've probably learned about some of these, but we're interested in JavaScript. So we have a button here. We can filter on our JavaScript courses. And so what you're seeing are the different versions of the JavaScript. So Golden, this is our main primary version of the course. This is usually what we recommend teachers as a good starting place. It's kind of what we consider as our regular full year course for high school. Kali takes that and just cuts it down. So Kali will be like a semester-based of a similar level course. It doesn't get quite into the animations games, but it gets through the major topics. And then we have Bulldog as our what we call like honors level year-long course. This includes the data structures module as default. And so it gets just into slightly more complex ideas and has more content there. So it would be a slightly faster pace. And our final version is video game design. So even though it doesn't have an introduction label there, it really is similar to our honors level introduction course. So it can be a first level course. And it uses game-based projects as a way to challenge students with their programming. So it's just a little more game focused than our Bulldog, but they're very similar. So with each of these, you can click View Units, and these are the modules that we discussed at a bird's eye. So you can see it starts with Carol, gets into JavaScript and the control structures, finishing with the animation and breakout. And there is a final exam I didn't mention as well. And then the supplemental, there's a lot in here for supplemental. So JavaScript is probably the course with the most extra content of all our courses, just because it's been around a while and we continue to work on it. So you can also, if you want to, from here, take the course, you'll see this View button if you're logged in. So if you click View, that will bring you to your student mode within the site. So if you're a teacher, you'll probably have teacher and student. So as a student, you can now take this course. So if you've used CodeHS before, you know this looks familiar. We have modules. Within each module, we have lessons. And within each lesson, we have our activities. So as I mentioned, most of these are going to include a video, some sort of formative quiz, testing content knowledge, an example, and then our programming exercises. So I definitely encourage, if you haven't taken the course and you're interested, start working through it. Start with Carol and just get a sense of what that involves. But yeah, so you have access to the full course content. You can work through it yourself through that. That was the View button. And then we have a marketing page. This is what you would see if you're logged out and you're looking at our curriculum. This is also a great page that you can send to administrators if you're talking about the course and what it might include. So there's some demos and quotes that you can share as well. So I just wanted to point that out. And I'll share these URLs when we're back in the slides here. So that's specifically course content. We also develop a lot of course resources, support resources for you as a teacher, one of them being syllabus for each of our course. So this is what our syllabus looks like. We get into the goals of the course, what it involves, prerequisites if there's any, and then we go module by module, listing what are the main topics that we discuss, some examples, activities that will happen, and then a rough estimate of what we think the contact hours and timing will involve. So if you're doing some course planning, hopefully this will be helpful just in mapping that out. And we even list at the bottom the supplemental modules with the number of activities that are in there as well, just to get a sense. So that's there. Again, from the course catalog, you can click View Syllabus and look at all of those. And the last thing I wanted to mention, our platform is robust. There's a lot of class management tools and resources here. Our summer webinars and workshops that I'll mention later will help go through a lot of this. But I just want to point you towards the lesson plans for this course. So if I click on lesson plans, this was Toolbox, lesson plans, and that will bring me to this page. And if you ever wanted to switch courses here, but this is the introduction in JavaScript. So here are all the lesson plans. So let's just pick one of them, because there's a lot here, and especially if you're a new teacher or new to JavaScript or new to CodeHS, this is an awesome resource to start looking through over the summer. If you're a free user, you'll have a handful of these available, but most of them will be part of our Pro package. And so if you're interested in the Pro package, which again focuses on the teacher management side of things, so like lesson plans, progress tracking, that's something you can reach out to us about, and we can provide more information. But in general, lesson plans will have objectives. They'll list the activities that we saw in that lesson. They'll group together all the solutions, which again is awesome if you are a new teacher. Problem guides provide a little more depth into the solutions. Vocabulary, many of our lessons have offline handouts, so you can print student and teacher versions of those, and that's just a great way to have like a blended style classroom to do activities in person. And then I think this is great. Again, if you're doing this for the first time, we've put together just ideas for lesson openers, activities, pacing for a given class, closures. We have the slides that are in the videos, so you could use this as a presentation if you want to do that instead of having students watch the videos and then discussion questions. So there's a lot here. Definitely worth looking through if you're considering or you're starting to plan this for next fall. And then we do map to standards as well. So you can kind of browse through here to see if your state standards or the CSTA standards are in there. Okay, so that is the course catalog, some basic access to resources. Hopefully that all made sense. We can see what questions you guys have in a moment. Let's just hop back in here.
We don't have any questions right now, Ryan. So we can maybe hang around a little bit.
Okay. So just two of the resources here. Again, if you didn't want to go in the site and navigate the course catalog, if you wanted just to look at the syllabus, if you type in codehs.com/syllabus/1, that will bring up our golden version of the syllabus. And likewise, here's the URL for the marketing page. So if that's something you wanted to send to an admin or another teacher to look at, you could grab that URL. We will have a recording of this webinar as well. So you'll be able to refer back to this if you wanted to look up anything.
Yeah, and I've posted all these links in the chat so people can have access to them now.
Cool. She's on top of it. All right, so that's it. Again, just a brief overview of the course. Would love to see if you guys have any particular questions here.
We had a question, which course has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? And so I think they're referring to our web development capstone course that we're releasing this year. The beta version is available now, so you can view it, but you won't be able to create a section with it for students until July when we do the full release. But that's our web development capstone course.
Yeah, and we also have, and I can just point towards in the catalog. So HTML, CSS is part of our web design course, which would be the first course. Oops, web design. So this would be the first course, maybe prior to that capstone web development course. This will introduce students to the HTML and CSS. So that course that Evelyn referred to will then pull together both the JavaScript aspect and the HTML framing aspect as that culminating course. But this web design course is available right now.
Great. So then we had a question. I'm wondering if a student were to copy paste their JavaScript code to me in an email, is there a sandbox in CodeHS that I could paste their code and see what it does and troubleshoot it? So do you want to show off the sandbox?
Yeah, and that's, so to directly answer your question, the answer is yes. So we have a sandbox here in the top left. And this is awesome. Essentially, it's just it's an online IDE. So students can, there are a few ways to do what you want to do. So if I were a student, let me just open up one of my programs that I wrote here. So in the More tab, a student has the ability to share their program. So this URL would be a public link that they could then share with anyone, and that would bring you to a page that you could run their program, and as a teacher actually be able to work with the coding and kind of troubleshoot. So that's probably the most directly applied method of what you were asking. If you're a teacher and you have a section of students, you can actually look at their code, directly in the editor. So let me just pull up, let's say, I'll pull up one of my sections here. You'll get a look at, this is actually my brother. He was working on some of his JavaScript. So this is, you can create a section. And again, our summer training will go into like, how do you create a section and how do you use the tools? But just because this is so easy. So I clicked on my brother from the roster page. This is now his course. I can see his progress. So if I click on one of his exercises, I now see his programming, and I can run it. And I can even troubleshoot, and this won't save to his program, but I can change things and kind of, troubleshoot the program myself. So if you're working with a handful of students, CodeHS makes it very easy to be able to look at a student's code, run it, and then you can also, in a conversation tab, actually communicate with that student. Again, we'll have the new teacher workshop this summer. I'll share that information. We'll get into more of the details of how you actually manage this. But
and can you show the test cases tab to show, what students are seeing when they run the auto graders?
Sure, yeah. So we have auto graders with test cases that can provide just some quick feedback for students. So if they click check code, so in this case, we had 3 different checks. So it's checking mainly on style in terms of indentation and looking at the commands, syntax, and were they correct. So Carol has limited commands, so we have an auto grader just checking that. So each exercise will have different auto graders. Some will check more specifically on results, like, if I, let's see, didn't put a ball here. So functionality now doesn't pass, because if I run this, I didn't actually put a ball in that top corner, but I was supposed to, based on what the assignment told me to. So that test case will just provide that quick feedback for the student, so you don't have to go in and help with every single step along the way.
Right, and so they're not going to catch every single thing. There's definitely code that could pass an auto grader that wouldn't pass standard. So we do recommend that, as a teacher, you don't have to put your eyes on every single piece of code that comes through, but spot checking is really good, just to make sure that, students are using proper style, and they're not, basically that they're kind of coding up to the standard that you want. The naming conventions are good, and kind of those harder things to check on.
Yeah.
Let's see. With middle school students, would you recommend JavaScript Golden? And so, I think this really depends on the background of your students. So I would say if your students have done different coding, if they've taken coding classes prior to this, I would say it could work for middle school students. We typically recommend this as a high school course, just because it is kind of an introduction to coding that gets pretty deep into ideas like control structures. They learn about data structures in the honors version of the course. So we usually recommend that students have completed Algebra 1 But it really does depend. I would say, you know your students best. And if you go through the course, depending on their background and the level of experience they're coming in with, this could be totally appropriate for a middle school course.
Yeah, and I've seen just from working with teachers, I have seen both where some will just use the programming with Carol, and actually we have that as a separate course.
Awesome.
So we have separated out Carol, as a separate course. So that in and of itself is a great middle school introduction. And we have another just option here if you didn't want to do the main JavaScript course. Our Computing Ideas course also has Carol as that introduction, but then is more of a survey course getting into computing ideas, web design. So that's another option as a full year course if you wanted more of a survey versus just strictly JavaScript. And we have a webinar too focusing on middle school courses that is I believe next week. So be sure to check that out as well.
Awesome. Let's see. We had a question on solutions to the problems. I think what the teacher is asking is, is there only one answer to our problems? So, sometimes students are taking a different approach than the solution program that we provide, but they're still, completing the objective of the exercise. So, Ryan, do you have anything to say there in terms of, guiding those students if they, are taking a different approach to the recommended solution?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think there is a best practice, and there are some, styles that are better than others. So for example, here is early in the course, we haven't introduced functions yet or control structures. So there's just a lot of lines of code. It works. I mean, before I deleted that, it works, it passes it, but there is maybe a more effective way, a more efficient way to program that. So I think that conversation around style is important. But what's great about computer science is that students will have different solutions. And so they can use their creativity and of course, like they're going to come up with ways that you've never thought of, that we didn't think of to solve a problem. And it might still just be as efficient as what we came up with. And so they might not pass, maybe one of our test cases because they've done it in a way that we didn't foresee. And I think that's okay. And that's an important part of that communication of there are many different ways to program. This is, about student creativity and problem solving and like how are they going to approach this? But there are some, major, I think, style points of there are some better ways or more effective ways than others. So I think that can always be a part of the conversation, as you move through the curriculum and introduce control structures and functions and comments, there are definitely ways to do that more effectively. And it's okay if it works and you're satisfied with their style and it doesn't pass a test case. You actually have the ability as the teacher to, manually mark it as complete too. So you can kind of override if they can't actually, or they don't get the finalized, test case thing. But it's a great question. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Let's see. We had somebody actually asking about future PD opportunities. So I know we have a slide or two about that.
I'll just touch on that and we can answer other questions as they come up too. So two things. One, we're doing a whole series of these course webinars, and that's happening over the next, I think, few weeks. So if you go to codehs.com/webinars, you'll see a list of all our upcoming webinars, and including at the bottom, you'll actually see past webinars for recordings of the webinars, so you can check those out. So the two coming up most recently, or soon. We have tomorrow is June 10th. We have the web design course. So for those, whoever was asking about that HTML, you may want to check that out. And then we, next Tuesday, will be looking at our AP Java course. So definitely worth checking out if you're considering AP. And those will be similar to this style, just an overview of the course. And then we are also running a handful of free virtual workshops this summer. Usually we like to do things in person, but the pandemic had other plans for us, which means anyone can attend. So they're not location-based. So these are definitely awesome and worth checking out. You can see the URL. Evelyn will put that in the chat. And these are longer, a little bit more in-depth trainings. So if you're new to CodeHS, definitely check out the new to CS teacher workshop. That'll be getting into actually using CodeHS as a platform, setting up sections, using the tools, pedagogy, etc. And then we have a handful of course-specific workshops. So for example, I'm running an Intro to JavaScript workshop in July, and that will again it's 2 hours, so more time to go into depth on the course content. We'll be working through a couple lessons with me as teacher, you as student, and we can kind of model some different ideas, and then we can look at lessons and talk about pedagogy and ideas and how to really how to best implement the course the way you want to. Less focused on the tools that our platform has, but more on the content of the course. So a lot of good opportunities, I think, this summer. And they're free. Free is awesome.
So we don't have any open questions now, but we can maybe hang out for another minute or so if people have any outstanding questions that they want to send in to us.
Cool. Cool.
We had a question, is there a previous recording of the new teacher workshops for somebody whose classes start in June? The answer to that is no. In previous years, we've been doing, these workshops were in person, and so we don't have recordings of those. But we can look into whether these are being recorded, and potentially you might be able to see a recording, even though it wouldn't be, you know, before your first day of school. You could.
And what I will say too is, and I didn't point this out when I'm on the site, but if you're logged in, and if you, not the I, sorry, Toolbox, sorry, just a moment. Siri started listening. Toolbox, and you go down to support. So for one thing, you can reach out to us with questions, but the knowledge base has a lot of just like how to do things. So you can search for different topics, but this is probably a great place to start, you know, getting started with CodeHS. And this will give you just an overview of, you know, different things in terms of getting set up, logging students in, assigning curriculum. So there's a lot of information in our help or our knowledge base. So, and I even think if we go to webinars, I think we have some past webinars. I'm just trying to think what's listed here. So if you reach out to us for help, which you can either contact our support through here or hello@codehs.com, we potentially could pull up an old webinar too, if we still have them listed. But so knowledge base is a great place to go to like start answering your questions of how to get things set up, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment.
And actually, while I'm thinking about it, because this does have a webinar, it was filmed in March, but if you go to codehs.com/virtual. So this was a page that we pulled together. It's in the knowledge base, but it was specifically for schools as they transition to virtual learning. So we currently there is a webinar here that I ran on using CodeHS for virtual learning, and it goes through a lot of the like setting things up and going through some of the tools for pro users to just help communicate and track progress. So that would be something that you could check out as well. Again, many of the tools, the course management tools, are part of our pro package. So if you're currently free, you might run up into some limitations, but all of our curriculum is available. So you can definitely get into that.